Right. Well, welcome to all of you from around the world. It's lovely to have you with us here tonight, and there are a few more still coming in. So fabulous. And tonight we're in our journey through the Rule of St Benedict. We're having a look at chapters 31 to 47. Now, I've entitled these Caring for One Another. And when I go through this, I kind of flick through and have a kind of general look at what I think might be a good title. But I'm always quite surprised that actually when I get to really read it through, that the title does surprisingly actually reflect what the chapters are about. So I call these Caring for One Another, but in a sense, it does more than this. These chapters do quite a lot. They are caring for one another, but they're caring for goods, they're caring for ourselves, and also they're caring for the community. So we're going to have a look at each of these different areas. And then there are some questions for you to ponder, which went out on the website. I think it was today or yesterday, so that you can have a little think about how you have read these chapters and how they can be relevant for you today. So let's have a little think about, first of all, just caring for one another. It's really clear that at the heart of St. Benedict's rule, he really ensures that absolutely everyone is cared for. His rule is not one in which you have to conform, but rather which is adaptable to take into account and into consideration the different members of the community and make allowances for the various needs of the community. I think that's quite important to remember, because when we think of the word rule, we often think of it in a kind of school context. Here's a rule, you've got to do what I say. But that's not how Benedict sees it. He sees it much more as, these are my guidelines. These are the guidelines to live a holy life, and the best life, the best way to live a holy life is in community. And this is how you work together as a community. So we see his emphasis on care in the different kind of individual needs. There's quite a number of times within these chapters where he actually goes to, this is what you should do, but actually, if you have this, I'm making allowances. So one of them, of course, is chapter 34, and he gives us a biblical basis for this way of understanding how to be a community. He directly quotes from scripture and says, distribution was made to everyone as they had need. It's this distribution of food and drink and implements and even of tasks that we see going through these chapters. A kind of general distribution, but also distribution on account of how people need things rather than want things. So it's as if Benedict has gone back to that early Acts ideal of the very first disciples, the very first church, to create for himself, or his ideal of what the Christian community, what it's based on and what it is. And it's this distribution made to everyone according to their need. No one is left behind. No one is left behind. So we see this happening in a number of chapters where we see care of the sick, care of the elderly, how much food is given how much drink is given. All of this is to be accommodating for individual needs. Needs are taken on board. And as I say, these needs are not necessarily what people want, but they're based on needs. It's often quite a spiritual exercise, isn't it, to stop and think about, so what are the things I really want and what are the things I actually need? And sometimes we can automatically go for the things we want, and actually we forget about the things that we need. And so Benedict is telling us, the only way you're going to live a holy and a healthy life within the loving presence of God and of other people is if you really take some time to think about, so what are the things I do need, and what are the things that actually I don't really need, but are actually, precipitated or brought out of the things that I say, I want that. And of course, that's quite a good spiritual exercise to go through, particularly as we start thinking about Lent, of course. So, what I like about Benedict as well is that the way he accommodates people is not so much on their status, not so much on their their hierarchy of the monastery, but it's also about what people need. It's about what is the weakness within each of us. So it's within their task or within their job. He's really aware, or what are the times when we just need to be really kind to one another. So the sick then are given a bit more food. The reader who's going to read during the actual time of eating, when everyone else is going to eat, is given a little bit more wine to sustain themselves. And those who are not strong enough to actually serve at the table are given some help. So always he's looking at, where are the places where we actually need to look out for our brothers and our sisters and give them what they need so they feel included and belonging, have that sense of belonging. I think it's a really amazing thing just to think about, really, and about how we act within society, how we act within our community, how we look after those who are most vulnerable. Invariably, we can do it in kind of a quite a patronizing way if we're not careful. I have, out of my largesse, I might give you, what you need, and it will make me feel good. That's not what Benedict is saying here. Is saying everyone is of value, and those who need a little bit more help are going to be given so that we all travel together. A real care for one another. But we also see this in a care for things. We especially see this in the chapter which is all about the qualifications of the cellarer, which is right at the beginning of the section we looked at. A quote from that chapter: "Let them regard," that's the cellarer, "all vessels and goods of the monastery as if they were the sacred vessels of the altar, aware that nothing is to be neglected." So once again, we've touched on this, haven't we, before, about how Benedict is very clear that, there's not the praying sanctity in the oratory when you're all together in church, but actually that the whole of life is sanctified by the presence of God. So what you do in the oratory, praying, the work of God, absolutely flows into the whole of the work, your work within the monastery, within the community, so that all of it becomes one act of reverence and of praise. And that word reverence, if you associate it with, the care of things, it gives you a real sense of attentiveness to what you are holding, what you are using, the things about you. I often think sometimes that when you look, somebody said this to me, and I found it really powerful. It's made me stop and think, is that when you look at a piece of furniture or something that's made out of wood, to just stop and think that that was a living tree once, and now it is your chair or your desk. And it just changes your relationship with that thing, because it doesn't become a thing anymore. It is actually a gift that has come from creation, but then has been crafted into something that you value and use. It's that kind of stopping and thinking and reverence and attentiveness to all of life that Benedict is really trying to imbue within his community in these chapters. So you see this particularly when he talks about the tools and the goods of the monastery. Now, if you think tools, it's like, I just need this, I'm going to use it, whatever, and all the goods and the bits. But that's even the same reverence is being used about those things which we need in life to do our part. So everything is playing a part. When he talks about the goods of the community, he particularly says that they need to be assigned to people for those who need it. And there's that sense, and it's actually the superior who's going to assign particular goods to particular tasks and particular people. So this is about the whole community working together. It's not about individuals. It's the same care and respect is given to all the items, but it's not that it's coming to me, but it's only coming to me so that I can actually build the community. And it's a very different way of understanding the things you're given. It's a bit like if you're given a prayer book, you can say, that's my prayer book. But in Benedict's thinking, it's like you are given that prayer book only so you can say your prayers for the community. And it gives you a kind of outward facing understanding of the things that you need and you use within the community. And it could be many different things. And it might be interesting just to stop and think about some of the tools you need and how often you use them for the good of others. And the superior is going to keep a check on everything. So it's going back once again to that Acts 4, verse 32. All things are to be the common possession of all, so that no one presumes to call anything their own. And it's not surprising that, of course, completely, the next chapter is all about private ownership and what Benedict sees as the unhealthy aspect of private ownership. I guess what this can do, it can really open our eyes and help us to reflect on the things that we have, especially in this very consumer society where things are flash before us all the time, and they're really going for that kind of childlike, oh, I want that, oh, I want that, and to help us sort of get that self reflection and say, well, do I really need that? And also, and what good is that going to do? Um, and once again, it's really saying that Benedict is talking about having what we need rather than what we want. There's also within Benedict, we mustn't sort of, I mean, we often talk about, the modern age as being so individualistic. But actually, you do see within Benedict a deep caring and reverence for yourself. It really matters what you do. It really matters how you are. It's not so much it matters in an individual sense, but it's more a sense of self-respect, a kind of reverence that you too have been created by God. You too, have a task, and you too are absolutely the temple of the Holy Spirit. And you have a place, a unique place within the community. So it's not like, Benedict is always saying, well, you must stamp out, any thought of who you are. And that kind of, the sort of way that religious communities sort of really developed, which is, stamp out the personal, because you've got to conform to the community. That's not actually at the heart of Benedict's community. He is much more about, no, you have a place and have a reverence, it matters. And so we see this in the weekly reader. They're to come to their task. It's an important task. And you've been gifted with this act of reading. So come to it with the reverence for what you're about to read. And there's also the aspect of asking the community to support you, to strengthen you, so that you can actually be the best that you can be. So that it matters how you read and how you approach the text as much as actually reading the Word of God. Hence, I guess that's why, Benedict once again really highlights, that if you make a mistake, then just recognize it. We're all human. But the worst thing is to say that you're better than what you are. So Benedict is very, very clear about humility. And humility isn't about self-denigration. It's about knowing yourself in the right kind of proportion, having an understanding of yourself, which knows that you get things wrong and also knows where you kind of fit in. It's not about, sort of puffing yourself up. It's not about anything to do with that, but it's knowing where you fit in, what unique gifts you have, and also reverencing that and not pretending that you're other than you are. Hence, as I say, Benedict wants any mistakes to be recognized, not only by the individual, but also by the community, because where you are within the community is important. So the community is there to support and sustain you. Lying behind this emphasis on care for each other is, of course, the wider concern of the care and the community. So how do we live together well? How are we aware of each other's needs? How do we make allowances for one another? So Benedict is very serious about moving us away from a me-centered way of living to an us-centered way of living. Benedict's community is one which is built upon respect and love for one another. How many times have I heard people say, their value is respect, and yet you wonder, do we really live by that value of respect? Well, we like it when people respect us, but, do we really go out of our way to understand and respect another? And I guess, when people admit their faults to you, when people tell you, well, I am what I am, and then it actually makes you much more loving and much more respectful. So it's a kind of a two-way thing of dialogue, making yourself vulnerable to others and others embracing you and respecting you for just who you are. So unlike other rules at the time, it's Benedict who adds in those few extra bits of glorias to be said really, really slowly, so that anyone who's a bit late to chapel, it won't be noticed if you're late to chapel. I think that's enchanting. I love that. I do love it. Say it really slowly and then just make sure that everybody's there. Really, 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 it's the little details of Benedict that really is speaks so much. And the other thing, the other bit I love, it's his loving rule, which states that don't read the Book of Kings at the night office, as it's really not going to help you with tired minds. Now, anyone who's read the Book of Kings will go, "Oh, that's so nice of you, Benedict. Thank you." So he has those little things that really knows human, what people are like. Now, also at other times when he says, adjust when your community meal is, just adjust it, during the daytime so that you're not going to create grumbling. So he's really saying, look, live the rule, not as a rule, but as a way to live together, a guide to live together. The way the individuals are to be with one another is absolutely epitomized in that chapter on the qualifications of the cellarer. In that chapter, it says, the cellarer is not to annoy the community members. In his case, it's about reasonably and humbly refusing any unreasonable request. But that also comes out when Benedict talks about caring for the sick. And he says, that the sick are also to make sure that they don't distress and have excessive demands on the people who are serving them. So it's not a one-way relationship. It's always a two-way, care about the other, but also the other needs to care about you. The cellarer is to respond to problems humbly with a kind word. And he quotes from Wisdom of Solomon, a good word is better than the best gift. Now, that's a great line, I think, for anyone who might be in management, is a good word is better than the best gift. When things are going wrong, no blame, no pointing of fingers, giving a good word, and that will actually form the community that Benedict says is the way we can grow and the way that we can see God amongst us. It's obvious, I think, from reading these chapters that Benedict's rule is absolutely based on wisdom, a really deep wisdom, not only of himself, he really understands himself, but of how we live together. What are the things that rub us up with each other, and how do we overcome them? it reminds us of much that we already actually know. But what's great about Benedict is that we do need to hear it again and again. And I guess that's why in a monastery you would have the chapter room in which the community gathered to hear a chapter of the rule, to be reminded again of again that we can live well together and what that actually looks like. So I really liked these chapters. I thought that there was stuff that was enchanting. I thought there was advice and it was useful, and I hope you similarly found that too.